Planning and Infrastructure Committee of the Los Angeles Charter Reform Commission. This audio for this meeting will be broadcasted live. It can be heard by calling telephone number 1-669-254-5252, using meeting ID number 160-158-6475. Press pound and press pound again when prompted for participation ID. There's also a facility on our website. I would also like to advise you that we do have translation services, but our interpreter, please make themselves known with a wave or thank you. And now we will, would you like to make an announcement in Spanish? And our interpreter? Just a brief announcement.
Buenas tardes a todos. Si quieren interpretación, tenemos aquí dos aparatos para poder atender.
Thank you. And now we will have roll call. Melinda Murray, Sheriff's Committee President, Mark Slacker.
Here.
And Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Thank you. And now, have you had an opportunity to look at the minutes from our last meeting, which was on Saturday, October 18th, 2025?
So moved.
I'd like to, with my second offer, friendly amendment, that we recognize such as the job restriction presentation. Presentation.
Without agreement, is there a motion to approve?
Or so moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Brief roll call, Melinda Murray, Commissioner I, Commissioner Slacker.
Aye.
Commissioner Stein.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we'll go on to the neighborhood council comment, community impact statements. Seeing none, we'll get into public comment. I'm going to turn it over to our executive director.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome everyone. Great to see the crowd here today. I'm going to be administering public comment. When I call people up, I'm going to call people up 3 at a time, in order to move the process. Folks get a chance to speak for a total of 2 minutes. 1 minute on general public comment, and then 1 minute also if they'd like on item specific comment. Today we have item number 1. So up to 2 minutes, let me know. I will ask you if it's 1 or 2 minutes. You can use as much time up to 2 minutes. You can use 30 seconds. All right. And I'm gonna again get started by calling 3 people up at a time. Simboa, Janita, and Jimmy. Simboa, Janita, and Jimmy, if you want to come up and sit and take that microphone at the very end. And so you have your back to as few people as possible. And you're perfect. Simboa? Yes? Are you Simboa?
Oh, yes, somewhere right there.
Okay, fantastic. What are you? 2 minutes. Alrighty, and begin. Yeah.
I'd like to say, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Simway Wright. I'm the Vice President of SEIU Local 721. I'm also, have dedicated over 20 years as a City of Los Angeles employee for sanitation as wastewater and drainage operator. I'm really proud of that. I'm proud to be a public works member, but I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about the recommendation that was shared to this commission by the mayor's office in a letter that was dated October 20th. They recommend revising the charter language to have Miracle Street lighting put into the Department of Water Power. On behalf of the 300 members that we represent in Miracle Street lighting, our members, we want to continue to work with the city, but we do not believe that it should happen. We are definitely against it. We want you to stand with us to make sure that we continue to work, and we'll advocate for our members, but we ask you all to advocate for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if well, no. So you can actually, yeah, perfect. That's gonna be the hot seat, if you will. So we have you on camera, because. So
All right,
the public can see you.
In the hot seat.
Janita, 1 or 2 minutes.
Oh, 1 minute, I'll do this, mine, 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Janita Equator. I am the Regional Director for the Cities Division for SEIU 721. I am here for a couple reasons. One, though, I'm here with my union siblings and community partners in the labor movement to make a statement that the Board of Public Works does the work to connect the community with the city workforce. It's a way to be able to ensure that there's transparency, it's a way to ensure that there's accountability, and it's a way to be able to ensure responsiveness. So we support the board staying in place, but I also wanna echo what our vice president brought up and let us know, and let you guys know that we are disappointed to see the letter that outlined the support for the revision of the charter language that would allow for street lighting responsibilities that are currently done by SEIU 721 members
And
to move to the Department of Water and Power.
perfect, thank you so much. Jimmy, after Jimmy, we're gonna have Liliana, Eddie, and Yvonne. So Liliana, Eddie, and Yvonne, can you stand ready? Jimmy, how long would you like?
1 minute.
1 minute and go.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Jimmy Francis. Unlike city workers are responsible for maintaining streets, parks, water systems, and other critical infrastructure. Every day, the Board of Public Works ensures these workers' voices are heard alongside the communities so that decisions reflect practical realities as well as public priorities. Charter reforms should strengthen this connection, supporting both efficiency, service delivery, and recognition of workers who make it possible. I've been here for 20 years and Public Works Commission been a valuable resource to the city workers and the city. Heard from public people who we contact far as work need to be done in the entire city. So commission is very, very important to both city workers and the public. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. That was Jimmy, Liliana, then Eddie, then Yvonne. Go ahead, and how,
1 minute, please.
and go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Liliana Sky, and I'm the longest SEIU.
Can you speak a little closer to the?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Liliana Ustinskaya, and I'm a lobbyist with SEIU Local 721. I want to stand alongside Jimmy and so many in the room today and lift up the extraordinary work done by the Board of Public Works. Los Angeles continues to benefit from such a strong model of worker input, community engagement, and effective governance of good public policy. Unfortunately, on the other end of good public policy, we find a proposal that was submitted to you all from the mayor's office. I want to make sure that we are explicit. SEIU Local 721 stands against consolidating the work done by our members in street lighting services with the Department of Water and Power. I strongly urge you all to heed the warning from our Vice President, Lassiter Wright, and reject this proposal. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and Eddie, Azles. Eddie, how long?
2 minutes.
And go.
Good afternoon, my name is Eddie Alvarez, I'm a resident of District 14 from Sedano. I'm also the council representative for the LALC Building Trades, on behalf of the Executive Secretary Inez Medano, our 160,000 members, and our 14 affiliates. We have some here today, we have some iron workers, some blasters, cement masons, and others, electricians. We're here today. You know, the board ensures people, the public works board, excuse me, I my notes, not just technical expert for bureaucrats, have a voice of how our taxpayers' money is spent. It provides transparency in contracting, and it also has protection policy, making a public forum, which I think is very, very important right now, in spending taxpayer dollars. The last thing we need to do is find a way to have less voice the way we spend our taxpayer dollars. Including mine, I live in District 14. We believe that our city's efforts, we better focus on capital improvement, public planning, performance management, and looking and more forward planning like we did with the convention center. These improvements can be achieved through administrative reforms and strengthening coalitions and coordination through other city services and departments. But getting rid of a board which gives the taxpayers and residents of the city a voice, is not a good thing for anybody. I also like to make forward that one of the reasons that we've been able to put millions of people to work in the city is the Board of Public Works. Because they were the first ones to get the project labor agreement in the city of Ross. And to getting rid of that, in my opinion, would take, put it in one bureaucrat's hand is too much power and allowing a board of people who live in the city and work for the city, make those issues much better. So that's kind of time spent. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. Yvonne, after Yvonne, I got Diana, Tia, and Victor. Diana, Tia, and Victor. Yvonne, please. How long? 1 or 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
And go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Yvonne Wheeler. I'm the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, representing over 800,000 union members of Los Angeles. And the Board of Public Works ensure equitable access to city services across Los Angeles and supports fair employment opportunities for city workers. Equity matters both for the residents receiving services and for the employees performing the work. When workers are treated fairly, their voices are included and their voices are included in the decision making. The entire city benefits. Any reforms to the charter should preserve this dual role, ensuring that community equity and workforce equity remain central to public services. And that is why we, 800,000 union members that I represent, strongly believe that we should keep the 5 seats with 5 different perspectives, especially one with a labor voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Diana. Diana? No, going once, twice, no, Diana. Tia,
I'll just need a minute.
go.
Good afternoon, my name is Tia Kuntz. I'm the policy director at the UCLA Labor Center. I teach labor and employment law. I'm a scholar of wage theft and working conditions in low wage industries. And what you may not know is that it's not just city workers that Board of Public Works ensures get a decent wage, prevailing wage, or appropriate public or paid sick leave, but also all workers. The Office of Wage Standards enforces the city's living wage law, enforces the city's basic minimum wage, as well as our paid sick leave, and has recovered millions of dollars in unpaid sick leave hours for workers throughout the city. I was shocked to hear that there might be a change to any infrastructure of the Board of Public Works. Don't explain growth for the second biggest city in the country, and having the kind of diverse representation and leadership for such a critical body is exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Victor, after Victor, it's gonna be Mario, Lori, and Steve. Mario, Lori, and Steve. Go ahead, how long?
1 minute.
1 minute, go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Victor Sanchez. I'm the Executive Director of Lane, Los Angeles Alliance for New Economy, something here in LA. I'm here to express my support for protecting the Board of Public Works and rejecting the proposal that's been sent forth from you all. The board allows community members and city employees to collaborate effectively, ensuring the public services reflect both professional expertise and the lived experience of the communities that we serve. And in our experience, the board connects the community with the city workforce, ensuring that there's transparency, accountability, and most importantly, responsiveness. Workers in public infrastructure know firsthand the needs and challenges of our neighborhoods. Their insight is critical for making informed decisions about streets, parks, and public facilities. Now more than ever, community members need a strong, intact Board of Public Works. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was Victor. Mario's next. Mario, how long?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? And go.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners, my name is Mario Berrigan. I'm local 11, representing 12,000 members here in Los Angeles County. The Board of Public Works plays a crucial role in supporting fair labor practices in the city. City employees, who provide essential services every day, from sanitation workers to street maintenance crews. These employees keep our city functioning safely and smoothly, providing preserving the board structure guarantees that workers can have input on policy affecting their working conditions, while also ensuring the public benefits from preserving Maintaining a balance between employee rights and community needs is vital for the city's, consider, charter reforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Lori, after Lori is taken. Lori, go home.
1 minute.
And go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Lori Candinas. I'm with AFSCME District Council 36. We represent the proud, strong, and dedicated workers of Los Angeles City. The Board of Public Works has long been a model of inclusive governance, balancing professional staff, labor input, and public perspectives. Inclusive decision-making strengthens both community trust and worker engagement. Labor leaders urge that any charter reform preserves this approach, ensuring that employees and residents alike can participate meaningfully in the governance of essential city services and that no group's voice is left out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then it's Steve, after Steve, I've got Audit LA, Moshe Ross and Darlene. Audit LA, Moshe Ross and Darren. Go ahead, Steve, go.
1 minute.
1 minute, go.
Hi, my name is Steve Vaughn. I'm a business agent, Placer Solar Field Area. I'm here on general public comment on general government. The book we strongly supports the word public, it is important thing in our efforts. Public employee thing, because thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Audit LA. Thank you so much. Thank you, 1 or 2 minutes. So, perfect, thank you.
Good afternoon and good afternoon to our wonderful commissioners. Since July of 2024, there has not been one public works meeting where numerous people, myself, except for 3 meetings, have not attended to discuss how, and they can attest to that, right? How Scientology has an overreach and an unfair advantage in our city in every single department. And a bunch of us are here to end that. And we've made progress, because like, see, as it is now, we can come to the commissioners, okay, more than just the director, that's why I'm here to speak up against any just a director taking over. Because I can come, I get to go say hi to these 5 commissioners and tell them what's going on, and tell them what's on our mind. Okay, and they hear us, and thankfully, I mean, we're on our 4th director now since we started. And I feel we have a wonderful commissioners right now that listen, make the public feel respected. Okay, and they, you know, and I feel there's progress, but if you go to a director, you're taking away transparency. You're taking away the public's ability to be able to go and redress their grievances. You're making it harder, and it's already bad enough that they, you know, that Public Works, none of these commissioners but prior, already reduced public time and public comment. You can't really say much in 1 minute, can you? But, and how about city council, where they basically taken away any ability to call in or anything, so I have to come all the way down here, I can't just call in. And everything should have an ability to call in. You're taking away transparency, you're taking away our ability to speak to you, to redress our grievances. So I'm asking you to keep this commission, keep the commissioners on it, if they're solid and they're good. And keep it working as is. Is that the end of my time? Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. And then Moshe, Darren, and Moshe and Darren, guys.
Hi, commissioners, good afternoon, my name is Moshe.
1 or 2 minutes.
1 minute time. All right, good morning, commissioners, good afternoon to you guys, my name is Moshe, I'm a part of the Los Angeles Black Workers Center. What I wanted to talk to you guys about today is the service in jobs. So first and foremost, the Board of Public Works, works to ensure equitable access to cities across the Los Angeles and support fair for employment opportunities for
city board for the city today. Equity matters both for the residents and also for the workers as well. To also end, for employees performing the work that they also, are performing as well. When the workers are treated fairly and their voices are included in decision making, the entire city benefits from that. No voice wants to feel like they're not left out, and what they do, they feel like they continue to benefit. Another thing is any reforms to this charter should be preserved in this dual role. Ensuring both communities, equity and workforce and remain essential to public services.
After Darren, I have, some Keisha, Conrad and Nicholas. Kaishi, Conrad and Nicholas after Darren. Darren, how long usually? 2 minutes. 2 minutes, go right ahead.
I'm Darren Sherman, good morning, Mr. My name is Darren Sherman, I'm a proud member of the Black Workers Center and 1036 Main Street. The Board of Public Works plays a critical role in supporting fair labor practice for city employees who provide essential services every day. From sanitation workers to street maintenance crews, these employees keep our city functioning safely, smoothly, preserving the board's structure guarantees that the work can have input to, that the workers. Sorry. Preserving the board structure guarantees that workers can have input on policies affecting their working conditions, while ensuring the public benefits from responsive and accountable service, maintaining this balance between employees' rights and community needs, finally, as the city considers the charter.
1 or 2 minutes.
1 minute, please.
Ready when you are.
Thank you. Hello, Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Kachi Dunphy and I am a proud organizer from the LA Black Workers Center. The Board of Public Works is a cornerstone of accountability in Los Angeles. It ensures that public funds are spent wisely, infrastructure is maintained properly, and city employees are supported in their work. Labor leaders know that keeping the board accessible to both the community and workers help maintain trust between residents, employees, and city hall. Any charter update should strengthen this accountability, not weaken it, so that decision making remains transparent and inclusive. Thank you.
Conrad? 1 or 2 minutes.
1 minute, general public comment, please. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam Chair. I just wanted to introduce myself. I serve on the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council, but I'm speaking as an individual. And I'm excited for our very first Charter Reform Committee meeting tomorrow afternoon. So you may be seeing us again. Like many who are late to a party, sometimes we stay until the end of the party. So look forward to a CIS in the future. And just one little piece of housekeeping, 2 of our committee members, myself included, tried to watch the Zoom on the 16th in this very room, and it was unintelligible. So I understand you've heard this before. I hope that you will follow up and ask the IT folks if it's working better, and maybe get some feedback from the public for future meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicholas. After Nicholas is, it's Bronco, Branko, Juan, and Josh.
2 minutes, please.
Go.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nicholas Caputo, and I serve as the neighborhood councilor for Echo Park and the executive director of Livable Advanced LA, a nonprofit focused on verticality, density, and better government, particularly in Hollywood and downtown. Now, from both perspectives, to see it's one of the same core problems. Los Angeles has essentially stopped growing, and our buildings are aging. Our population's been flat for 20 years, not because demand is vanished, but because our planning and infrastructure systems no longer allow the city to make room for people or let them get around. This committee's work is one of the few levers we can pull to change that. To meet our state housing need, we must approve 94,000 homes per year. We have our best year in the past 5, produced just 13,000. That gap is not inevitable, it's structural. To fix it, the charter will give us the tools to plan coherently and act decisively while powering up our union growth.
For example, mandate general plan updates every 6 years, so land use policy keeps pace with reality instead of falling decades behind. Integrate planning, housing, and public works into a single growth-oriented structure, ensuring infrastructure capacity is aligned with where we plan to add homes, and empowering up the ability for unions to have their voices heard in the process, not taking that away. Allow the planning director to certify by right compliance with housing goals, so good projects don't die in endless discretionary delays. Empower the controller as chief financial officer and let them audit permitting efficiency and capital project delivery, bring transparency and accountability to how we meet housing and infrastructure targets. And importantly, give neighborhood councils a formal mechanism to trigger an ethics investigation. The majority of councils in a district so vote, restoring public trust, strong anti-corruption on this issue, and accountability at the local level. If we build these reforms into the charter, we can finally move from paralysis to progress and start being the scale of our challenge. Los Angeles can and should be a vertical, livable city again, but to get there, we need a government capable of building as boldly as its people dream. Thank you very much, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, and then Juan. Yeah, right, go Juan and Josh. Good, how long? 1 minute, go.
Good afternoon, my name is Ronald Bergson, I am a resident of West LA in the 5th district, and I wanted to speak on making LaDOT the charter department that has responsibility to construct and maintain streets from property line to property line, moving Bureau of Street Services to LaDOT to streamline the process and make it so that the department that manages street and safety and traffic flow also has the ability to effectively build and maintain streets and sidewalks. On top of that, to shore up street funding with a regular percent of city assessed property value similar to Parks and Rec and the library, since this is a essential service that covers the largest public space that the city controls, our streets, so that it has a minimum funding every single year, much like libraries and parks and rec. And finally, to change the city budget to a 2-year cycle and formalize a 5-year capital improvement plan. Because as we know, most projects, large projects, take multiple years. So our budget should reflect that in 2 and 5-year cycles. Thank you.
Thank you. Juan. How long would you like, Juan?
1 minute, it's fine.
Alright, ready to go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Juan Munoz with United Care Local 11. First, let's start on the planning issue. Our union supports building more housing, especially affordable housing across Los Angeles, so everyone has a place to call home. But as we grow, it's also important that our elected officials continue to have a say in especially how commercial projects and land use decisions are made, including changes to general plan and how public land remains used. I also want to express our union solidarity with many that are in the room about the Board of Public Works, and especially about how the workers affected by that board's decisions are made, are taken into consideration. These are the people who keep the city running every day. Their knowledge and experience are essential in shaping the services and ensuring that they truly serve our communities. As this process moves forward, please make sure that the voices of workers and the public remain at the center of our city's decisions. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. Josh. After Josh, we have Lionel, Rob, and Charlie. Lionel, Rob, and Charlie.
2 minutes.
Go.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Josh Redbow, and I've been leading the charter reform research effort at Streets for All. Thank you for giving us a chance to present this last weekend. And you have a couple important decisions before you today, one of which is how to integrate DOT and services done by VSS. While it might look tidy on the work chart, I want to caution against simply moving DOT inside Public Works. This will lead to fragmented management of LADOT and VSS, and it also doesn't follow best practices found in other major cities. New York City has a Department of Transportation that can build streets and sidewalks. So does Chicago. So does Washington, DC. So does Phoenix, so does Philadelphia, so does San Diego, so does Atlanta, so does San Jose, so does Seattle, and so do most major cities in the United States. Our sidewalks are broken, our streetlights are broken, and someone is killed or severely injured on LA streets every 5 hours in a car crash. We need a single department that is responsible for traffic and street safety, property line to property line. Thank you. Thank you so much. 1 or 2 minutes? Yes, please. 1 or 2 minutes. Oh, 3 minutes. 1 or 2 minutes. Oh, 2 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Marvis, residents, Council District 6, but advocate speaking on my own behalf. I'm here to urge the commission to protect civil servants and to ensure city services are preserved for the residents of Los Angeles. I want to be clear that city civil service employees are to be protected from political persecution. I also want to urge the commission to make the LADOT a chartered department, as was made by the comment from my previous commenter. And I also support the capital infrastructure plan, CIP. I think the city deserves a better infrastructure for our residents and for everyone who lives in LA. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Rob, 1 or 2 minutes?
2 minutes. Rob Vaughn with Under LA, and I want to just start by calling out the mayor's proposal to move street lighting to LADWP. This just feels like a really shameless attempt to free up revenue by shifting that responsibility over, and that comes at a cost, and that is our city council loses authority, our elected representatives. I want to be a bit of a contrarian on this whole Board of Public Works thing, just say, I'm not saying we should get rid of it. I just don't think we need a full-time board. What we're doing now is not working, and it's simply a budget issue. Public Works is unique, but it's not that unique. They wield a lot of power, so does LADWP, the Police Commission, and Planning. The idea that they are some essential independent check on corruption is a bit much. We get some great people serving on that board, but it is a mixed bag. And regardless, we are left with a board that is dominated by mayoral appointees. I see value in having a salary position, maybe not quite so much. I see value in them meeting frequently, but I do think we should look at changes and be open-minded about that. I want to really lean in and just say, we're repeating the mistakes that council went through in the last charter review, and we're doing worse. We're setting ourselves up for failure. This commission is dropping a 56-page report less than 2 days before the meeting. I appreciate the work that went into that, but I literally haven't had a chance to read it. I repeatedly conveyed to this commission that they were setting themselves up for failure by having an impossible timeline where deliberations come 4 days after you had new presentations. You need to heed the room. People are turning out here because they're realizing that stuff's getting real and they gotta be here and be involved. You gotta put them on notice so that our commissioners can read these reports, we can, so that we can actually provide feedback. And you can read that and the staff can read that before you walk into these meetings and make these big decisions. Because every decision you make is gonna have another reaction and it's gonna bring new people out here and you need to be a whole lot more put together. Lastly, I'll just note, you changed the meeting room and no new agenda went out.
Thank you so much.
You updated the website, but no new agenda was posted or sent out to
Charlie's
family in the basics.
2 minutes. You.
Hello.
Charlie, 1 or 2 minutes?
2 minutes, and go. Hello, commissioners. This is Charlie Carno with United Care Local 11, the Hospitality Workers Union. We support housing development, particularly affordable housing, all over the city of Los Angeles to address our housing crisis. That's why we support items like item D4, which would require a housing finding for general plan amendments. However, we believe that our elected officials must retain their land use authority over commercial development in both adjudicatory decisions as well as important decisions over general plan amendments. That's why we oppose making an unelected official or a board the highest authority for adjudicatory decisions, as well as the planning department's suggestion that a failure to act on general plan amendments would result in automatic approval. We also believe that elected officials must retain the authority they have over the city's use of public land, including the proprietary departments, which is why we oppose the Harbor Commission's proposal that CUPs be dealt with very uniquely by the commission rather than the general process of the city and ultimately and in some cases by city council. As this process moves forward, please make sure the voices of the public can still be heard in the development of our city, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Last on my list is Andrea Romero, but if there's anyone else who didn't get a chance, this is gonna be your last chance to come up and sit up front. But Andrea, and then anyone else, last chance, please come up behind Andrea. This is gonna be my last call. Okay, Andrea, what are 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
All right, ready to go.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Andrea Romero, and I'm a proud record United Care Local 11. While I don't support directly under the Board of Public Works, I stand in solidarity with the workers who do. Their expertise in sanitation, maintenance, and public works keep Los Angeles running. Often behind the scenes, but always essential. I know my workplace, they know theirs. These workers know firsthand what our city needs to function safely and efficiently. The Board of Public Works makes sure that their knowledge shapes city policies and programs. And we lose that connection, we risk making decisions without the people who know the work best. Any charter reform should protect the board's role and bring worker expertise into city governance, while still ensuring strong public oversight and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What are 2 minutes?
1 minute.
And go.
Good afternoon, my name is Diane Limon, I'm a member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11, Los Angeles. Frontline city workers are responsible for maintaining streets, parks, water systems, and other critical infrastructure every day. The Board of Public Works ensures these workers' voices are heard alongside the community so that decisions that reflect practical realities as well as public priorities. Charter reform should strengthen this connection, supporting both efficient service delivery and recognition of the workers who make it possible. We support the workers that you've heard before us, our union brothers and sisters, as well as making sure that the voices of our members who reside here in this great city of Los Angeles continue to be heard. But we also support preserving the structure of the Board of Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please. How many minutes?
Tom Brody, I'd like 2 minutes.
Go.
Thank you. So I came in with all kinds of organized notes, and I'm just gonna, it goes all over the place. So I think the big issue to me, I'm part of the LA Ford CIP working group. So we've been told by the mayor's office, there's not going to be any actual community engagement. And part of that is because the city hasn't dedicated any resources to do community engagement. That is a lot of pressure on community-based organizations, more pressure than they should have on them. It also puts a whole lot of pressure on you, because by default, you become the community engagement process. I'm concerned that, and I love their comment about sending out a huge amount of material to read, but not giving people time to really study it. It looks to me like because I know the next one is what, January 14th. It looks to me like October 22nd today, to January 14th is an incredibly significant time to connect these dots. You shouldn't be under that amount of pressure. All of these folks and additional folks shouldn't be under that amount of pressure, given how incredibly serious this is.
Okay, go ahead. Last person. 1 minute.
Good afternoon, my name is Sam Clemente, business agent with Teamsters Local 396. Commissioners, the frontline city workers are responsible for maintaining streets, parks, water systems, and other critical infrastructure every day. The Board of Public Works ensures these workers' voices are heard alongside the communities, so that decisions reflect practical realities as well as public priorities. The members of our local union have been direct beneficiaries of this book. Just recently, the RFP process for receipt, dissenting voices, dissenting votes have caused there to be conversations that have led to other conversations that have ultimately resulted in solutions for our membership. Our membership, we represent thousands of members throughout Southern California. In LA City specifically, we represent waste haulers, solid waste workers, the men and women who keep our community safe and clean. And we were able to find solutions, but the conversation started at the Board of Public Works, and we want to make sure we have that for the future. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All righty, Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, and now we will have our next presentation from the staff.
All righty, I'm gonna start by reading item number 1 into the record. Okay. Item 1, discussion relative to potential planning and infrastructure related charter amendments, including but not limited to issues related to current city charter conditions, related policies governing the planning, delivery, and oversight of Los Angeles's physical infrastructure, a capital review program, land use decision-making structure and governance, and possible action regarding related report back requests and related matters. Madam Chair, we're gonna do a presentation, we're gonna give everyone a second to reset.
I just wanted to thank all of the speakers. I'm sorry that we won't stay for the entire presentation, but thank you to all of the public speakers today.
Thank you, we're just gonna take a presentation, set or lost the screen, there it is. We're staff is gonna do the presentation, with Max taking lead on this. And we hope that through the duration of the presentation, we can hold questions. Folks, you can take the conversation outside. If we can hold questions until the end of the presentation, and then we'll look forward to asking questions from the committee. Staff's goal for today is really to take the temperature of the committee, hear questions, get questions that will require report backs and more information. And just really get informal guidance. We don't think it's necessary, for example, to unless the committee feels differently, to move anything forward, to take votes at this point in time. But really, this is an opportunity for us to get guidance and get feedback, and also bring potential feedback, report backs to the committee, to this committee at a later date. So with that, I'm gonna pass this over to our deputy director.
Chair, I'm gonna ask a question. Perhaps the question is to you just a bit. Because there are, lengthy lists of recommendations. And you mentioned you're asking questions or clarifying, I just wanted to check in with the chair about how we want to go through that. Am I, if I have a comment on everything, I don't know that that's how you want me to present myself. But I guess I'm just trying to understand how best to give feedback, given the extent of what's going to be in the presentation.
And what I'd like to do first is have the presentation, and I have some areas that I would, as I said at the last meeting, to take the temperature. But we'll have questions just about maybe the substance, and then we'll take it from there as far as
okay.
Even we're not gonna be voting on it. So want to hear their presentation first.
Sure, but you're gonna give us some structure to engage beyond the some clarification. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy director.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Max Panemski, I'm the Deputy Director of the Charter Reform Commission. And I'm joined by our policy consultant, Michael Shilstone. I'll let him introduce himself briefly.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Michael Shilstone. I am pleased to support the Charter Reform Commission staff and your efforts as well. And I bring to this work over a decade of experience working in planning and public policy in Los Angeles, including issues related to governance and the charter.
So, in this presentation, we're going to walk you through the reforms that we outlined in our second staff report that was posted on our website. Next slide. So our goal with this report was really to present a menu of reforms for you to consider. These reforms were generated from the July 30th and October 18th commission meeting. We also added additional reforms that came from council motions that were on the charter reform council file, as well as department letters. We did not exclude reforms. In some cases, we actually added additional reforms where we thought it might make sense to bifurcate certain ones or provide additional scenarios. So we, as I said, really try to provide you a full list of reforms and, you know, as you can see on the document, we listed the organizations that proposed each of these reforms. Next slide.
Working on it.
I think we jumped ahead a little bit. Yeah, maybe one back. So the other thing we did is we took all these reforms, we analyzed them, we tried to look at what the relevant charter change would be, sort of the implications of each of these reforms. We did background research, many of these have been proposed in the past, and there's some paper trail in terms of staff reports and other things. We also, consulted with city attorney's office, chief legislative analyst office, and other city departments on each of these, and really tried to give you where possible sort of the implications of each of them, and also most importantly, whether they have to have a charter reform to be implemented, or if they can be implemented through other means. Next slide. And we took each reform and we grouped them into categories, within the broader categories of infrastructure and then plan. And our first set of reforms we'll go through will be related to infrastructure. So our first category is reforming the Board of Public Works. So just some context. The board is in the charter. It's composed of 5 members who oversee the various bureaus within the Department of Public Works. They are appointed by the mayor, confirmed by city council, and are the only full-time paid commission within the city of LA. The board comes out of basically progressive era reforms from the early 20th century. LA is one of the only large cities in the country to have this structure. So, criticism of the board is that we should shift to a more traditional system of managing public works that has a director of public works, which would help streamline coordination between bureaus and create more accountability. Defenders of the board say that the board provides transparency, allowing the public to directly share issues via their regular meeting. And they also play an important role in terms of contracting and handling appeals, and provide a neutral body that is separate from the city council to hear those issues. So the first proposed reform calls for creating experience requirements for the Board of Public Works. So currently in the charter, there's no basic qualifications you have to serve on the board. This would basically involve taking, language that we have now for example, the director of planning position, and we could apply that to the Board of Public Works and obviously change it to reflect, relevant experience to public works. The second reform we have on here is empowering the director of public works, and we're gonna go more in depth on that in another slide. We also have, getting rid of the Board of Public Works and replacing it with a new structure such as a director of public works. Another option here is make the board only in charge of contracting. So this would keep the valuable role of having a separate body for contracts and handling appeals, while leaving the day-to-day operations of the bureaus to another entity such as the director of public works. And by doing that, you can also do things like make the board voluntary, which could save money and salaries. So next slide. So now we're going to dive into some background. So we did get a lot of proposals to create a director of public works. There actually already is a director of public works in the charter. They are a general manager level position and have authority over planning and hiring and firing the bureaus. And this was a reform that was actually added through the 1999 charter reform process. However, when this reform was made, there was a lot of opposition, within City Hall to it. And there was actually a council motion in 2005 that used section 514 of the charter to transfer the powers of the Director of Public Works into the board secretary, which effectively eliminated the position. I just want to highlight that 514 section of the charter, which basically gives the mayor or council the authority to transfer powers of certain offices and departments into other positions. And that's relevant to other things we're going to be talking about in the charter, but particularly with this Director of Public Works role, something you might consider would be if you wanted to add that to put that position in that 514 section as one of the positions that's actually excluded from those 514 transfer powers. So now we're going to move on to our second broad category, which has to do with realigning departments to better deliver infrastructure. So the first proposal in here is, moving the Bureau of Street Lighting into the Department of Water and Power. This is something that's been analyzed before, I think back in 2008, and we have a, link to that report. That found that there, could be some cost savings, but there's also a lot of issues with, EWP being proprietary department and, how you use ratepayer funds. The mayor did write a letter, and, interpreting that letter, I would say her words are that she's open to this reform. So basically making, changes to the charter that would allow for that to happen. We also have other proposals that we're gonna do a deeper dive into this issue, but merging Bureau of Street Services into LADOT. And the organization Streets for All is in favor of that. We also have a proposal to merge LADOT into BSS, which the mayor indicated in her letter that she'd be in favor of. And we also have another proposal from United Neighbors to create a new board of infrastructure. And on all of these areas, we also gave you a no option, and in some cases we described, why you might consider a no option. And a lot of that has to do with, some of these things can be done by the council through policy and don't necessarily need a charter change. So next slide. So one of the core issues with infrastructure in the city is sort of the issue with having a Bureau of Street Services and a separate Department of Transportation. So BSS, their main role is really repaving streets and doing curb work, among other things. And then we have LADOT, which is in charge of planning and implementing transportation projects, including bike lanes, crosswalks, and signals. And one of the core issues here is we're really, as a city, asking more from our streets than just repairing potholes. In 2024, voters approved the Healthy Streets LA initiative, which calls for the city to implement the mobility plan whenever we repave, I think 600 feet of street. And the mobility plan, has different designations for a lot of the city's major streets, calling for things like bus-only lanes, for bike lanes, and for pedestrian improvements. And DOT is really the department within the city that's capable of designing those facilities. They have teams of engineers and also transportation planners. However, they're not able to construct those facilities because they're not able to repave the street and they're not able to do curb work. So, one project we highlight here is the Hollywood Boulevard Vision Zero project, which reconfigured, a large segment of Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood and East Hollywood. And there was a second phase that was added to that project, that basically starts at the intersection of Hillhurst, Hollywood, Sunset Drive, and connects to existing bike lanes on Sunset below Fountain. And that Phase 2 of this project was added after HLA was implemented. And because of that, LADOT had to follow the mobility plan, so putting things like bus lanes and pedestrian improvements, which calls for new or improved curb ramps. But in order to do that, they have to coordinate with BSS to get on their schedule, so to get on the repaving schedule, which BSS, does in advance and sort of has a separate strategy for doing that. And also have them design these curb ramps and also implement these curb ramps. So that this, issue really highlights what sort of how the way our departments are structured sort of inhibit some of these mobility improvements. And there is some history behind this. So DOT was established by ordinance in 1979, so it's not a charter department. And it came out of a CAO report that called for a larger restructuring of the Department of Public Works, which would merge BSS and DOT. And that basically, never occurred. And so this is kind of one of the critical issues that needs to be resolved with infrastructure, is handling the difference between those two. So the next topic, which we received, many organizations are advocating for this, is capital improvement plan program. And I think, before we sort of get into this, it's helpful to talk about how the city currently does capital planning. So next slide. Okay. So the city has a capital and technology improvement expenditure program that includes a 5-year capital improvement plan, which is prepared by the CAO on an annual basis. In 2019, the CAO created a capital and technology infrastructure program. And each department adds projects, which are then evaluated for inclusion into these programs by the CAO. So they have a number of metrics that they look at for including them. And then they send a list of the approved projects to the mayor that's then included in the annual budget, which is approved by council. So the city does have a process for capital planning, and it does have a 5-year budget. But the criticism of this structure, and the reason why people are saying it's not a true CIP, is that they say it's just a list of projects and it doesn't plan for future need. So in terms of adding a CIP to the charter, we really need to think about how we would change this existing project process, how we would codify that in the charter, in which departments would be responsible for it. And this is also where we have some overlap with other areas. For example, if you created the director of public works in the charter, maybe that the director of public works was now responsible for the CIP. And this is also an area where you need to determine if a charter change is even needed. Because the issue would be is if you put a very explicit process into the charter that could make it extremely rigid and difficult to change, and adapt, as we go into the future. And we also, with Mayor Bassin's ED9, the city is actually also, in the process of creating a sit-through policy. So that's one thing to consider is, does this specific charter change, or should we let sort of the current processes that is happening play out? So next slide. So we have a number of proposals to increase budget appropriations for certain infrastructure departments. So currently in the charter, there's 2 departments that basically get a guaranteed funding amount, which is the library and recreation and parks. The library actually increased that amount through a ballot proposition in 2011. And we have a proposal from RAP to asking that their amount be increased as well. And then we also have a proposal from Trees for All asking for a amount to be set for both BSS and LADOT. And so, the issue here is, on one hand, you're sort of, by doing that in the charter, you're guaranteeing like a certain standard of service for these departments. On the other hand, you're, reducing budget for them. So next slide. We also have a number of proposals from RAP to protect public land and do things like allow the Department of Recreation and Parks to issue debt. And I think those are all of our infrastructure reforms. And so now we're gonna move on to planning. So planning, you know, power over planning is sort of one of the key areas where the city sort of sets their priorities for growth and development in neighborhoods. And it's also, you know, at the heart of this charter reform process in terms of issues that have come up with the process. So our first set of reforms have to do with area planning commissions. So area planning commissions are another reform that was put in by the 1999 process. And that came out of frustration from neighborhoods that they didn't have discretion over planning decisions in their own neighborhood, and they were all centralized in City Hall. So the charter reform basically sets a minimum amount of area planning commissions around the city that basically handle appeals from the zoning administrator. And some of the issues that have come up is that increasingly state law is giving the city less flexibility to you know, adapt you know, discretionary approvals per neighborhood. And because of that, we've had an issue where, you know, recently a lot of APCs have been canceled because they have a lack of projects. And then on the other hand, you know, there's been several lawsuits recently where APCs have been sued for being sort of out of step with some of these state laws. So we have a proposal to basically combine the APCs into a new body that would be a board of neighborhood appeals. And you could, you know, have strategies to sort of retain that that geographic balance by, for example, putting in a provision that, you know, the members of that have to come from certain areas of the city. We did get a letter from city planning, which, you know, basically is in favor of giving more flexibility around the number of APCs. And then we have, you know, some other recommendations here, you know, allowing area planning commissions to consider issues de novo in the appeals process, which, you know, city planning has sort of outlined that recommendation. And then we have another proposal that was from Abundant Housing LA to make the zoning administrator, the director of city planning, and the planning commission the highest land use appeals body. So basically, you know, taking the council out of, you know, decision making about projects, and making them more sort of a policy body to set policy and leaving those bodies to decide those issues. So we have another case study in our report that talks about, you know, some of the issues with planning process in the city that have come up recently. So one is, you know, this project 3601 Mission Road. This is a pretty standard, you know, housing development that was on, you know, Main Street across from a public park. It was submitted in 2002 and it was approved by the City Planning Commission in 2023. And 2 appeals were then filed against it. And there was a hearing set in the Planning and Land Use Management Committee of the City Council in October 2023, which was then continued to August of 2024. And before that hearing occurred, the council member requested an additional environmental reports. And the hearing was then rescheduled for September 2024, which was again rescheduled to December of 2024. And the developer, you know, then sued the city using a new state law and alleged use of discretion, and the project was ultimately approved by council in August of 2025. So this is sort of an example of how some of these discretionary processes can be, you know, used to delay housing and really create a lack of transparency for the public about what's going on with the project. And also an example about how some of our processes might be out of step with state law. So these set of reforms are about, city council land use actions. So, the first one is about eliminating charter section 245E. So charter section 245 basically allows, the council to send decisions made by boards, basically veto them and send them back to the board. 245E is unique in that it allows, the city planning commission to actually assume the authority of the area planning commission and the city planning commission. City council. Yeah, sorry, city council. So the city council to assume the authority of the area planning commission and the city planning commission. So there's been calls to basically eliminate that 245E and make, APC and CPC, like other boards and commissions where they would be able to veto it but not assume their authority. We also have some other proposals about codifying time limits for all city council land use actions. And automatically deem them approved if council fails to act. We have requiring all general plan amendments to meet criteria similar to measure JJJ, which is a ballot measure that was passed in 2016. And that is expiring next year. It can be renewed, I think, for 2 5-year terms, but this would basically codify that in the charter. And then another proposal by United Neighbors to give ministerial approval to all projects that are in compliance with Green Code LA. So that's the city's new zoning code that's been rolled out with some of the recent community plans. Slide. And here we have a set of reforms related to the city planning commission. So one is experience requirements for city planning commissioners. So this is, similar to the one we heard before for the Board of Public Works, but currently there's no, experience requirements for city planning commissioners. So this would put that in the charter. And also another one here is establishing the director of city planning as the chair of the city planning commission, which is a model similar to New York City. Here we have a whole set of reforms that many of which were proposed by Benton Housing LA to basically ensure that the city is building an adequate amount of housing. So this includes, ministerial improvement projects under certain size, mandating sufficient base zoning capacity in the city. So basically that the city has, certain capacity for new development at any given time, reducing the number of community plans, and required findings for general plan amendments to forward housing opportunities. So here we have a number of proposals for city-owned land. So the first one is, basically making the city council the ultimate authority over decisions regarding city-owned land. So not, boards or commissions of the council would be able to decide what happens to them. Requiring a periodic assessment of city-owned land. Allow land owned by Recreation and Parks Department that is not being used as a park or open space to be sold, which we're gonna go into more detail on. And provide LAHD with authority to develop housing and related uses. So this is a little case study sort of on that, being able to use Rec and Parks land. So there's been a number of sort of policies by the city, going back a few administrations to use city-owned land to build affordable housing. But there's a number of areas in the charter that has basically conflicted with this. And this is just an example of a property. This is in Montecito Heights that's controlled by Rec and Parks, but it is not being used as a park. It's a vacant piece of land, going back over 2 decades at least. It's directly across the street from Debs Park, which is a 300-acre park. And it's a block north of the Rose Hill Recreation Center, which is another park. So this is an area that has many parks in close proximity. It might be a good place to build housing or some other community serving use. But there's provisions in the charter that make it extremely difficult to use a land that's controlled by Rick and Marks, even if it's not being used as a park for other uses. So this would be exploring charter changes to basically help, facilitate, doing something with pieces of land like this. And here we have a number of provisions around funding affordable housing. So one is providing LAHD with the authority to fund projects. So ULA, which was a recent ballot measure passed by voters, this gives LAHD authority to allocate funding for affordable housing. So that measure, generates a lot of funding for affordable housing. But policy basically has dictated that LAHD must go to the council to get approval to fund these projects. And that can be often very time consuming, and if there's any changes in the funding, they have to go back. So this charter change would basically make it easier for LAHD to give out that funding for affordable housing. We also have a proposal here about setting a dedicated amount of funding for affordable housing. So now we have a number of recommendations related to economic development. So first one is one you heard about on Saturday. This is eliminating Charter Section 104E, which is a section very early in the charter that basically limits floor area ratio. So essentially how tall a building can be or how big a building can be to 13:1. The planning department is asking that we eliminate this. The issue with this one is it most likely would need to go through a secret process before it's actually put on the ballot, which is probably not enough time for us to send this forward. Another one we have is one recommended by the harbor, by POLA, which is to allow them to give out conditional use permits in the harbor area for those to be granted by the Board of Harbor Commissioners instead of by city planning. And then we have another council motion by CD15 that is to create a new charter section to create a Port of Los Angeles public access investment plan. We have some other proposals. This is from United Neighbors to merge the Department of Building and Safety and the Department of City Planning. This is another thing that's been explored before, most recently during the Garcetti administration. One thing to note about this that planning collaborated on last Saturday is that the zoning review functions of the Department of Building and Safety are already being moved into the Department of City Planning starting next year. And then we also have another recommendation from City Planning about streamlining quasi judicial decision making. And then our last section is a number of proposals from United Neighbors to basically codify in the charter that the city will protect single family residential zones and basically fend off legislation from Sacramento around building more housing. So that is a very brief overview of all the things we have in our report, and I encourage everyone to go through and read those because there's a much fuller description of those. In terms of next steps, so the Planning and Infrastructure Committee will deliberate on all these issues. You can choose to have additional meetings if you would like to discuss them. And also, ask staff to refine some of these proposals or change them. The committee will select the reforms to advance to the full Charter Commission. The Charter Commission will then do further deliberation and ultimately select the reforms that will be advanced in the City Council before April 2nd, 2026. So thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
If we wouldn't mind a committee privilege, can we take a 5-minute breather and then recess? Yes, it is 5:25, so we'll be back to 5:30 for Regain our composure. This is for a little while longer, thank you so much. And, meeting reconvene at 5:31, for roll call, Trustee Murray, Preston, Chairman Schneider. And.
Here.
Chairman, Commissioner Schneider and Commissioner Stein. Okay, and then I want to thank the, staff for their great presentation. People have pointed out that we got our very lengthy staff report, that's a lot to get through, and so we appreciate everyone's patience. And now, we're not going to deliberate in the traditional sense, but as chairman, I'm going to take the temperature of our commissioners. So we can start to focus and narrow things down, and we can also direct to the staff and see where we are, because I believe one of the speakers commented that our next scheduled meeting isn't until January, but we want to do as much work as we can to narrow our focus and also be transparent and let the community know where we're at. So what I'd like to do, first of all, are there any questions on the substance of the presentation or any things, because we've had several presentations over the last couple of months that we put on this journey together. And I think all of us commissioners have a pretty good grasp on the issues, but is there any clarifying question you have with regards to any item? I'll start with Commissioner Schneider.
Do you want those by section or are we going A through whatever?
Just by section, if there's something that stands out.
Please go ahead if you have. I mean,
Commissioner Stein.
Well, I would like to have some discussion of the 2003 infrastructure report and any possible updates. And at the same time, at our next meeting, which I hope is long before January, have either the head of BOE or its designated representative, but the head of street services, the head of street lighting, and perhaps there's a couple of other of those agencies as we get longer. Sorry, I didn't mean. Wait, the board.
This is ours and public. It goes to City Hall and spoken.
We'll have a dance off.
What is your questions that they rejected? Everybody goes.
Hey, I have yours.
Okay.
And.
Let's figure this out really quick. This is new. This is a new one for us.
I do have a lot of questions on the CIP. Being up front, I'm all for it by the year CIP, but I just have some fun questions as well as who's actually gonna be responsible.
I have those as well.
Together.
Yeah. Oh, so let me switch like, if I can ask for a follow-up, if you have specific questions for the people you want, like, BOE, ESL, etc. If we could get those in advance as well.
The answer is yes, and I'd be happy to give it up to you, but I would still like them to be present because I'm sure whatever their responses may be, are going to lead to more questions, which without their being here, it's impossible to get that answer.
Thank you. So I too have lots of ideas and recommendations for future exploration. But in terms of just a couple clarifying questions, and I'll save the other aspect for later. In the city planning section, is it city planning? Anyway, where you make a recommendation about the zoning administrator being the highest land use appeals for adjudicatory actions. What is that? That's A under planning 3. So where I was unclear was how that relates to council authority versus other authorities within the planning department. Could you clarify that for me if this is eliminating the council role?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at that. So, currently the appeals processes are dictated by sort of layers of statutes. So that includes the city charter, the municipal code, but also state code, especially as it relates to CEQA appeals. So, state law requires that any CEQA appeals must be heard by the legislative body, the elected body. And so, at least under state law, the city charter does not preempt council from hearing appeals to CEQA issues. There's also a matter of items that are legislative, so things like general plan amendments, specific plan, zone changes, those must necessarily be heard by the legislative body, as set forth in the charter, the city council. But as far as adjudicatory issues, which are more project-specific issues, so things like conditional use permits, certain of those are laid out in the charter. Who hears those? Currently, it depends on the kind of adjudicatory decision, who the final appellate body is. So if you go to the city plan, some of them go to the city planning commission, some of them go to area planning commission, some of them go to zoning administrators, and some go to city council. So for example, the sort of highest level of conditional use permit, class 3 conditional use permit, that goes to city council. So this proposal would basically just streamline all of those adjudicatory decisions and have them go to one appellate.
And the recommendation is that then doesn't pay for the council. Is that correct?
Any adjudicatory item.
Consistent with state law.
Right.
So I appreciate that, and I feel like I'm gonna need further sort of understanding of the comparison between existing and proposal. But I'll just add then that is there overlap with that 245 language? So if you're removing council for this action, as you outlined there, and 245 is still in play, is there still a council oversight of those actions? Maybe that's just something to answer in the pop-up.
Yeah, I think that's something we want to check with the city attorney on. That's a good question.
Thank you. I'd like to ask both council members. We never know, commissioners, whether or not there are any areas that haven't been explored, that you want to explore.
For someone who has been critical of staff at times, I think the reports that were presented to us were very, very thorough, very well thought out, very well written. I think it really covered everything that I think we've heard as a commission in terms of presentations and council motions and such. So I'm very pleased with what we have before us.
Thank you. Yes, I would like a couple of areas where I believe it would be valuable to further explore beyond the scope of where we've been thus far. One where I've noted previously, and maybe it's under economic development, maybe it's elsewhere, but is this question about, is about contracting as a vehicle for, the delivery of infrastructure projects, whether there are, additional, methods or mechanisms that weren't of the norm when the charter was up, that if there's any barriers in the charter to be able to expand upon the opportunities to make most efficient and cost-effective use of that. As well as the vehicle for preferencing or incentivizing certain elements in the contracting process or in the contract selector process. Specifically, as an example, there's section 104B, which around economic development is citing how you may use incentives on tax licenses, license tax fees, and that's very limited language, which I think is an example of where I'm seeking a greater understanding of whether there's some opportunities to broaden that, what's available to the council and policymakers and the departments to be able to pursue economic development. Thank you. I am looking for a couple others, which I know maybe this one's a question as well. We did get a recommendation from Streets for All in their presentation about following the property line to property line as a way of organizing. I didn't really see that reflected in these reorganizations that were proposed. And I do think that it suggests the way that they have presented as well suggests the opportunity to further break apart the responsibilities within the bureaus or departments to be able to reassemble them. I really think that's an area where we would benefit from further exploration, both from the Streets for All presentation, but also just as a general theme. You want to say something like that?
So, yeah, I mean, basically, the structure now, you have curb to curb, which is DOT, but it's really like what's on top, it's the striping. And then the signals, crosswalks, things like that. DOT doesn't pour concrete. So when we're talking about curb ramps, you have to go to VSS or sometimes BOE. And a lot of the sidewalk, I mean, it's very, I mean, we saw that diagram of sort of the right of way. But things like, bus stop, street furniture, or VSS, for example. But when we're talking about everything, it's sort of, in street trees or VSS, it gets complicated, right? Because, power poles are BWP, and street lighting, you have VSL. So, and I just want to, we really put in here recommendations that were presented. So, there wasn't a recommendation, for example, like consolidate VSL with DWP, but those are all, or with VSL with LADWP, for example, but those are all things we can't explore. But the sort of property line, we're sort of opening up a whole, universe of departments in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I am suggesting both that we're opening up the universe, but also that we are being more creative than a simple merging. And that's what I saw in the Streets for All presentation, was they took some aspects of the bureau and shifted it into the department. And left some aspects within the bureau. And I think to do that more comprehensively may or may not be within the sphere of our capacity, but I think that's merit. And you say there wasn't the recommendation on VSL to go to WP, but you considered it. I mean, I specifically mentioned ESL in my question to Streets for All. And they said, yeah, maybe we didn't do that right away, but it's something to consider. So I think, I think just on the face, there is an intent here that we are all trying to be deliberate about, which is how can we drive this coordination and what reorganization helps drive that coordination? But I don't think that we should be limiting ourselves if there are, if there are better constructs here. Noting that, we're here to recommend to council, which may recommend to the voter, and so I don't want to be limited solely by those two black and white recommendations. And the Street for All presentation suggested something slightly different. I'm suggesting that we may want to use that as a launching point for further exploration.
I have a follow-up question first, if I may, and that is, how far into the weeds are we going to go? I mean, should DOT merge into BSS, or should BSS merge into DOT? Or is it just simply a statement, if that's what the commission approves, we believe that BSS and DOT should be merged? I'm trying to figure out how specific we're supposed to make our recommendation, because candidly, again, I'm maybe I talk too much in terms of how I'm gonna vote. I'm for a merger.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't care if one merges to the other merges to the other. I just think those two have to be in the same department.
And I think it's up to this committee and ultimately the commission to go as far as they want to go or not. So for your example of merging, a permutation would be like, if you're merging DOT into BSL or vice versa, and you're putting that in the charter, then you're, I think at that point, making DOT a charter. Something that's in charter that doesn't exist.
So it's a good point, and I think it speaks to an alternative approach we may want to fully understand, which is this point of chartered versus unchartered. This point of, what the FOC employee applies to and what it doesn't. And if it's our determination as a commission that we're not able to get as deep into the weeds to give a perfect recommendation there, we don't have a consultant support for some of that or whatever, that we may be, I want to be looking then for removing barriers to the policymakers being able to act. And so to build on the idea that maybe we don't give all the details here, we're recommending something should happen. We may, however, then need to adjust the charter to ensure that those actions could be taken. How do we remove barriers to the council and mayor being able to reorganize? And I think that's an important alternative that we have on our list.
I think that speaks to one of the mayor's recommendations on number 6, that would revise charter language to allow for street lighting responsibilities. It's not mandated, but there are things that we can do, that this commission can do, that will allow changes to happen down the road, taking off those guardrails that are in the charter. Or again, the committee and the commission can decide to add guardrails or do it on their own if they feel strong.
Thank you for that commentary. I would also like to hear, we have your BSS folks at BSL. I think we need to hear more from them to decide if you're going to just get rid of guardrails or make some specific recommendations. So moving on, are there any areas that we agree on, and 2 things that have been coming up, which has been sort of 100% recommendation from all the entities, are a 2-year budget cycle and a 5-year CIP. Now, I think we may agree, of course, I don't know, because I haven't sort of individually. The 2-year budget cycle, I think that's an easy recommendation. The 5-year CIP, which everyone has recommended, I am concerned that it's not. Would we be voting to codify it in the charter, which I would recommend, but in speaking with the staff, that may be easier said than done, but how could this commission, if we agree on that, make it easier or facilitate that? Commissioner Stein.
Well, I'm not gonna address your question because I think it is easier said than done. But what I would like to see from my perspective, because of the woeful state of infrastructure that we have in the city, and that every time there is a budget crisis, the one thing that seems to get cut is infrastructure first. In order to balance the budget and such. That we consider, and I'm not smart enough to tell you the percentage. But we mandated in the charter that a certain percentage of each year's budget must go for infrastructure and perhaps park and recs, but that way we could start to cure it. I mean, the only other ways I can see to solve the infrastructure problem is we could have a bond initiative, and that's well beyond our purview, but council could bring forth a bond, or I guess signature gatherers could do that. But depending on what type of bond, if it's parcel tax, or if it is a sales tax, it has very different thresholds in terms of what needs to pass. I believe with the sales tax, it's a 5% threshold. But they're up against a cap that you can't have more than 11% sales tax within the city, or I think it's a state department within the state. And then if you go to the parcel tax, I believe it has a 67%. City attorney, my correct? A 67%. So.
To vote to pass.
Vote to pass.
Yes.
So. The only. That's really rolling the dice. I mean, I'm not saying that if the council does that, it's not something to support. But I think there's gotta be a way to guarantee infrastructure. And that is by giving that percentage that I talked about in each budget. Has to be satisfied, and I don't even want to see how it could be removed. Now, I know the con argument is, well, you've taken away our flexibility. But the pro argument is for an infrastructure that, and you take the 2003 report. And you're like me, and you're skeptical that not that much has been done with infrastructure since 2003. At that time, it was $9.5 billion to try to solve the problem, and in 2025, that's a little bit over $20 billion. We can't allocate $20 billion, even if you did it over 5 years CIP and said, oh, we're gonna spend $4 billion a year. Or at least you can shift at it incrementally, that perhaps maybe in 10 years, long after I'm serving on commissions, that perhaps if I'm still around, I'll be able to see some of those benefits. I'd like to see a discussion of that as a possibility. And there's a whole host of issues. I mean, this 2003 document, and I don't know how many of you had a chance to really read it thoroughly. It's the most damning document, and it's not directed, well, obviously towards this mayor or this council or the mayor who happened to be around in 2003 or the council that used to be around in 2003. We've kicked this can so far down the road for so many years that I would like to see the commission do something to stop the can kicking and cure the problem. And somebody, and they didn't even include public buildings. It's not rated in here what it takes for a public building, what got them. We have people coming, well, City Hall is safe, thanks to Mr. Eaton. It's not gonna go. But how do we ask the public on the public buildings when we haven't inspected them and we don't know what it costs to bring them up? I mean, look what the county's just gone through. And I'm not gonna weigh in at all whether, the Han Center or what the Hall of Justice named after the late supervisor should be abandoned or not, that's way above my pay grade, but, they buy this building way below cost. But when they looked at the retrofitting, it's probably still a great deal economically. The building appears on paper, from what I've read, I've learned a long time ago, you don't believe everything that you read in newspapers or see on TV. There's a lot of money that has to go in that to make it safe for the public to go in.
So just to clarify, you want a percentage with the budget, 1%, that's your.
Yes.
That you want a percentage together.
And maybe improvements, an increase in parks, yes.
Sure.
On the budget and the CIP.
Yeah, it opens up a really excellent line of conversation. I think it's very helpful for the city to have a CIP. 2, 5, 10-year outlooks, 20-year outlooks, whatever it might be, however you want to draw that out. I don't think we need to get super detailed in what a CIP looks like beyond suggesting that it exists. But what I do think, in order for that to be successful, is required are two elements. One you're opening the door to, which is what are the funding mechanisms, right? And whether it's the kind of percentage that is set forth in a couple of the recommendations on a department specific approach, which becomes a very difficult ballot box, budgeting, which I'm, just generally reluctant to do. But how else, what are the alternatives? And so I think it's important for us to have some input into what some of those alternative mechanisms may be, and if the charter is putting forth any limitations on those. So the city has fees, the city has taxes. Are there any limitations set forth in the charter that we should be addressing such that we can better be able to fund that? Or do we indicate some approaches such as automatic escalators on fees, such that the budget is able to be more robust? And we can also then separately tackle this question about the assigned percentage. So funding is one mechanism, funding and financing. And the other is the line of authority to execute. And that's where we get to these questions about the departmental coordination, but also what the executive authority of the mayor's office along with the council are in directing these activities. And I think necessarily, if we're to see a citywide CIP that is developed and then executed, we have to explore the line of authority in that execution. To date, this commission has been not exclusively, but very heavily focused on the Board of Public Works, rightly so. But we do have other capital investment vehicles in the city, whether it's general services or the proprietaries. We started to get into Reckitt Parks finally this last meeting. So there are many mechanisms through which capital investment flows. Right now, that coordination is, if not in the Board of Public Works, is under the CAO. And I think at that point, we're starting to get into a need to look into the organization of whether the CAO is adequately structured to be able to deliver on as an executive line of authority on the infrastructure plan. So setting a CIP as an expectation, I think is fairly simple and kind of a no-brainer. What are the mechanisms for funding it? Are there any limitations in the charter toward that? Are there any indications in the charter we should be making, including should raising? And then what is the executive line of authority to get that done? And is the existing coordinating mechanism, frankly, the CAO, and also, as we've been talking about, the Board of Public Works, sufficient in that regard? Or do we need to be constructing something slightly different? I will just, at the risk of going on too long, indicate that this does overlap with another one of our committees, and I think this is a really important line of sight for staff, in that, you know, there's a controller question as well about how budgeting is set, and this question about a CFO. And frankly, I see those intertwined with this discussion about how we budget and execute the CFO. And I have thoughts about what I think would work, but for the purposes of today, I'm laying out that this is an area where I think we need to broaden what we've been saying to ourselves thus far.
Thank you. All right, real business session. Now, since we're in the weeds, let's talk about something that's a little, for lack of a better term, controversial. The Board of Public Works.
We have.
Yes, we do, and we had a lot of comments and presentations, and I really appreciate the presentation and the comments from the SEIU folks and the other union folks, AFSCME and the Black Workers Organization. So let's take the temperature again. This is not necessarily deliberation, and we have a long way to go on these issues, but I'll start. I do believe that we should keep the Board of Public Works. Now, as it currently stands, that's a different issue. Are some things gonna be folded into it? I don't know, but that's my initial feeling. I don't have a problem that it is unique in the country. I do think maybe there should be qualifications for those positions, and it appears from the presentation that we got at our last meeting that all of the commissioners are highly qualified, but codifying to some extent their qualifications would be a terrible thing. I think they are responsive to the community, so that's where I'm at. Not that it should not be tweaked, but that's sort of my initial. Again, we got several recommendations about how it can be tweaked, and what departments would be meshed in, meshed out. But that's sort of my initial thoughts. And again, we don't have to do a deep dive into this, but I'd still like to take the temperature of the other commissioners with regards to that, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Stein if you have any comments about that particular issue.
Well, I acknowledge that I have a prejudice to this matter, considering that my wife served on the Board of Public Works for 10 years. The idea of making this a part-time board, and I've heard nothing but great things about the board that's presently constituted. But I can tell you that if you leave the Board of Public Works with the duties they have, the idea of making this a voluntary board or a part-time board is crazy. I mean, the executive director called me the other day and we were having an honest discussion. He said, well, how much did Ellen really work a week? And I said, literally between 40 to 50 hours, because it's not only the time down on the third floor that these commissioners put time into, but it's the time when they go out to nighttime meetings, to speak to different issues in different communities. And I don't need to go through it all, but if you put all of that together, I think the board does a yeoman's job of trying to satisfy it in terms of bringing in, so I for one are really, in many ways, I'm open if there's some change. But for the most part, I'm a no change guy on the Board of Public Works. I think it runs extraordinarily well. And the old saying, if it isn't broke, it don't fix it. I haven't gotten any indications that since the time my wife left, saying that was the perfect time. That the board has changed directions in any way, other than being very conscious of what they're doing. As for experience of board members, my wife was a housewife. I mean, literally, she became a citizen commissioner when Mayor Reardon was elected in 1993. He asked my wife, well, do you want to be on a commission? She said, yes, I want to be on animal reg. And she actually, you're laughing, but it's a true story. And she actually served on animal reg for close to a year, and the mayor then decided he would like to move her over to the board. So I don't know how we would define experience, because I watched it in my own house, someone that had no experience, who I believe did a tremendous job benefiting the city. And she was, as Chris Westhoff told us on Saturday, truly a citizen commissioner. She didn't, excuse me, she didn't come as a lawyer, she didn't come as an architect, she didn't come as a union member who had experience, whether it be in the trades or in a different union. She came as a citizen, so I mean, I would hope that there'd be other men and women that would be given that opportunity to be a citizens commissioner. The other discussion of having a, I don't know if you call him executive director. That's already in the charter. I mean, I think it can be said that we tried it once and it didn't work out, but that might have been the personality of the individual who was appointed at the time. And so I don't see a need for a charter amendment that add this because it's already there. Therefore, I don't think there's a need to debate the issue of should there or should not be there, because it's already there. That's pretty much my view.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
If I may, Ted, we spoke about this earlier as well, Commissioner. Max, you copy.
Yeah.
Max, can you also go over that, the section about transfer again, because that was an important piece of information.
514.
Yeah, so the authorities of the executive director, as outlined in the charter, were transferred by council motion, right?
Yeah, it was transferred via council motion, so.
To the secretary, right?
Yeah, into the secretary. So I believe if you wanted to undo that, you would have to, have another motion in council. But yeah, I mean, you're right, it is in there. But it was basically nullified, so, I mean, one thing you could do is, right, you basically put it in that being exempt from 514. So that they would have to keep that position and use it.
But isn't there a lot of coordination that has to be done in the sense of you have 5 bureau heads in Board of Public Works? They all believe they are the general manager of their department. Now you're gonna bring in someone to oversee them. And that one person may not have the expertise, whether it's in street services, or it's in street lighting, or it's in urban forestry. That's not a department, it's okay, or sanitation. And as I'm asked this question, this isn't a statement. if tomorrow morning Mayor Bass wanted to do this, couldn't she appoint this man or woman for that job? I realized, I think when that motion was taken, Jim Gibson was still the board secretary and everybody loved Jim Gibson and he did a terrific job. I don't even know who the secretary for public works is anymore. But couldn't the mayor fill that if she felt that strongly about it without us having to do anything? I heard what you said about the transfer authority in the council motion a couple of years ago.
I mean, this is, yeah, I don't know where you go, but you know, there was a motion, so. I don't know if the mayor could just undo that motion. Or if you need some sort of council action to do it.
Well, isn't everything, even if the mayor were to appoint, isn't it subject to the approval of council?
Yeah. I mean, the mayor could do her own 514 and. Shift back.
Just for the benefit of folks who may not know, 514 also, 514 is a mechanism in the charter that allows transfers of powers from one board or office to another board of office or office. The action has to be done through the ordinance, 2/3 approval, or a mayoral action, 2/3 concurrence of council. So it envisions, I guess it's been both bodies, the mayor and the council. The mayor can appoint the person, of course, but the current structure of these roles are defined by those ordinances, which can be undone by council without a charter. But that's our state.
Yeah, what I'm trying to ask is though. If council could at any point, if they wanted to rescind that ordinance, they could rescind the ordinance, and so therefore I'm trying to think of with all the issues that we have to cover in charter reform, why that even gets included.
You're right, that it could be done by ordinance.
Thank you,
Thank you. Well, I have a lot to say in this. This point of the director of public works that you were just lining on, I agree that I don't see a usefulness at this time in abolishing the board of public works. I do see usefulness in strengthening the director of public works role. In everything that we've been presented and in my experience, I don't see the failures of coordination as a result of board activity. But structural activity. It's not individuals, it's not personalities usually, it is more structural. So how do we focus in on those structural questions? I do believe that empowering a director of public works is a useful approach. I also believe that the more leeway we can give to policymakers to keep the city agile, to be able to respond to changing conditions, to be able to adjust to conditions, and to take the voter out of having to care where PSL is, is placed in the city's structure of departments. Most of these things are not things that the voter needs to be paying attention to. And so where we can offer a more responsive and agile structure for our policymakers and our executive office to act upon, I think that's valuable. And therefore, I think it's still an important recommendation from this committee and our body as a whole that we would both preserve the Board of Public Works and empower the Director of Public Works. And it may be that that is not a chartered action. It may be that that's a recommendation to act, use it, by reversing 514E and enabling a greater, restructuring of that power. So I think it's still critical that we chime in about that, even if our outcome might be something less than a charter review. I'm sorry, go ahead.
is that one of the, since we already have a board of public works, if we decide to retain it, there's obviously nothing that goes in the charter. So if you're talking about consideration of reversing 5.14, is that sort of become this long preamble,
Well, no,
Sure.
the reason I still think that there's value in us exploring it. Is also because there may be charter language that's useful. As an example, if you look at section 506A, there are specific responsibilities delegated to the director. And while I think we should keep the Board of Public Works, it may be useful in strengthening the Director of Public Works to look at the responsibilities that are currently assigned to the board and the responsibilities that would be assigned to a director. And those would be, could be charter, actions, in my read of it. So I think, I'll just say one other line of, well, let me say two other things, is we talked about experience, and we talked about the value of the board. I do wanna react to the recommendation option, recognizing they're just options from staff, not recommendations from staff, but options for us to make recommendation about whether the Board of Public Works remains or would become voluntary or narrowly responsible for contracting. So as I said, there may be a division or a reassemble an adjustment of board responsibility and director responsibility. I don't believe, however, it makes sense to narrow the board's focus solely to contracting. Why would I want a board running my contracts if they're not informed and engaged in the work of my department? So that doesn't make sense to me. And the idea of moving this to voluntary, while we would get some sort of immediate gratification of you saved whatever, $500,000 or something. This strikes a chord with me because I think if it is important enough to have a commission, then it is important enough to pay the commission to do. And when you're looking at the Department of Water and Power, it's got a $10 billion budget, and we're expecting that to be run by 5 volunteers. We're looking at the kind of budget and the scope of work that the Board of Public Works is taking on, and we're suggesting that's gonna be done by volunteers. That doesn't make any sense. If the work is significant enough that it's important to do and the capacity is necessary, then we should be able to pay either the commissioners or at a minimum, some assistance to staff volunteer commissioners. Because otherwise, they're just there waiting for the department staff to give them a recommendation to, and maybe they've read it, who knows, right? So I feel very strongly about that, and therefore I feel strongly that while we're looking at a possible realignment of Board of Public Works responsibilities and Director of Public Works responsibilities, I don't want anyone to mistake that I think that means we should diminish the significance of the Board of Public Works. In the way that we are delivering large and broadly scoped capital investment priorities, if there isn't a Board of Public Works, it does diminish the public insight and access to that process. And I want to acknowledge that as well, because right now, the way that things are, where coordination is focused, the way follow-up is pursued in a mayoral directive on capital investment is through the mayoral staff. So right now, you want one staff person that then is checking in with the Director of Public Works, who's then overseeing multiple bureaus? Or do you want that mayoral staff to be able to work with additional capacity of publicly appointed and transparent, fully engaged, full-time commissioners who are helping drive that coordination and that follow through. I think that capacity is super valuable. And, you know, I recognize that can get lost in the lambasting of bureaucrats and, you know, taxpayer funded positions or whatever when it comes down to the ballot. But we need to be able to stand up for the fact that this work is important enough to do it right. This work is important enough to provide public access, and it's important enough to be able to pay folks to be able to do it. I'll just note one other thing on the requirements of the commissioners. And while I appreciate the intent, I also hear that that personal story you had, Commissioner Stein, and also recognize that we do want to make government more accessible. So I want to reduce limitations. Either way, regardless of whether there's value in identifying some criteria or not, I don't think that belongs in the charter. I think that should be policymaker action to be able to then adjust. We shouldn't then have to go back to the public and say, oh my God, we forgot to have an information or an IT or an AI expert or something. That's what we need on the board. Please, voter, please understand to make this,
I agree.
micro change in the charter. Right? So, thank you.
Thank you for your input.
I have one last issue on board public works. I listened carefully today what all of the union members had to say about the Bureau of Street Lighting and staying within public works rather than going to the Department of Water and Power. And I think what the Charter Commission is asked to do is to make the city run more efficiently. City to serve the residents of Los Angeles equal. When I say equally, that all parts of the city of Los Angeles are entitled to the very same benefits. And while I heard the arguments today, and they were persuasive in a way, I think moving street lighting to DWP would be cost effective. And I think it would additionally give those people that today work at street lighting, this is what I'm told, swearing, spend so much time tracking down who stole wire and then going back and rewiring the various bridges or poles or whatever it is. Where a lot of the people that work in street lighting probably enjoy the challenges of DWP, where there is more to do for electricians than simply chase down stolen wire. So that's the one recommendation that I see, that we could take something out of the Board of Public Works or out of the departments, not out of the board, and transfer that to DWP for efficiency and for cost savings.
Thank you. I'm gonna move on to another,
I'm tired of me flying.
No,
It's
no.
okay.
I'm gonna move on to another topic. I don't want to keep people forever, but I just kind of didn't want everybody to take the temperature. Thank you for both of your input. The section 245E, which keeps council approval. No. I haven't made up my mind on this one. But at this point, I love transformation and change, but at this point, apparently not on this issue. I am still in favor of keeping that. That's just my temporary, I'm undecided. My feelings are that we had commentary in one of our town hall meetings from folks who live in the valley, who have an equestrian community. And they were very pleased about the help that Councilwoman Rodriguez has provided them. And we all know that the city of Los Angeles we have our urban core, we also have the suburbs. We have equestrians both in the North County and South part of the county. And so I do believe that the city council should have something. Yeah, one of the reasons that we're all here on this commission is because of corruption. However, those folks were booted out of office and some were indicted and some are convicted. And so I believe there are guardrails in place. So that's my initial position, but I know, if we have, 13 commissioners, we're all gonna have different positions on this, but I'm, just taking this.
Name that we have 13.
I'm sorry, allegedly, or
Okay.
proposed, potential. So, yes, I'd like your initial thoughts on this again. My position on this is very fluid, and the majority of comments have been to, get rid of 245B, but, commissioners.
In many ways, I'm agnostic as you are, and we're more pro equal than agnostic, so I apologize for that. The problem is with 245, from what I've seen from my personal experience, in business that I engage in. If it is a large project. And there are large players in, whether from financial resources side or from the side of unions, whatever the case may be. That gets a real fear getting in front of the council. When you have a project that might be a 20-lot subdivision. It's really just a council person of that district, because the other 14 more likely than not. Aren't gonna pay much attention to it, it's in his or her district, if that's what they think is right. And that's the part of 245 that bothers me, I mean, and I don't know if. Bifurcated into whatever we find as quote unquote large and quote unquote. Normal, regular, whatever that word may be, might be a better approach, but again, I haven't made up my decision, I think there are so many things charter reform has to deal with. This seems kind of low on the list to be talking about.
Yeah, I just, because the planning commission has sort of talked about it a lot, and folks are talking about it, and again, one of the reasons why we're all here is because of it. And there has been language like we talked about with some other things and massaging the language to make it easier, or have more guardrails, so I just wanted to take the temperature, so thank you for your comments.
Thank you for the question. The part that I'm not, that I haven't landed on is whether there's time limits that we should support. That I'm still torn about. I, however, would not remove, the 245, and I think that was I didn't present that as part of my questions related to the changes of zoning administrator and appellate bodies. But certainly I was thinking about that. I'm in favor of streamlining and clarifying and, making it clearer and more transparent where the appellate bodies are, as we talked about before. But I do think where the city council exists as an appellate body still needs to be in place. The change from the planning department goes in terms of clarifying the de novo element, though, that makes sense to me, that we provide that clarification. The reason I believe that the council still, needs to have this tool at their disposal, however, does go to some of the large principles that I carry in entering into this charter reform examination. And that is that we need to be bringing the charter into the modern era to provide the city more ability to be responsive, more agility to be able to respond to changing conditions, And as much as, it's critical to have a general plan and a mobility plan, et cetera, when there is public demand, the elected officials need to be able to be responsive. And I think I don't want charter reform to remove the ability of our city officials to be responsive when there's public demand. I want charter reform to provide our policymakers and elected officials the ability to be more responsive. So as much as, bad things can occur when that is in place, I believe that its removal can also lead to negative perception and frustration. Thank you.
Thank you, and that kind of leads me to our next question about the area planning commissions and the review. Should it be de novo? I think we could do a deeper dive, but thank you for saving me one question. One final thing on planning is a 13:1 ratio FAR. Everybody has said we should, well, most of our speakers and presenters have said we should get rid of it, but Max found a loophole that says that again, much easier said than done. And you did touch on this in the presentation, but at our next meeting, we're gonna need to see what exactly needs to be done. There need to be zoning administration and general plan agreement? How can we facilitate?
Yeah.
How can we facilitate that? So I think that's something that we need to explore.
There's something we're also working with City Attorney's Office, bring this commission, this committee, more options in relation to that, see if there are more options or if there is no more options. So a little more research, a little more advice from our City Attorney's Office. We'll hopefully have some.
And I appreciate that, because I believe there is an option that is, has the indication of how previous charter changes have been enacted, but in the staff report and presentation today, it was indicated that this wasn't possible, and I think that is different than what you're saying right now, and I'm supporting what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
Because I believe there are options.
I'm saying there might, I've spoken to the Attorney's Office on this, about, just my general idea of something, being able to put a sentence.
Go into it.
Yeah, putting a sentence into the charter that would effectively say, if a secret process held and the state process played out, giving the council the option,
Yeah, I think that's one that I have a similar.
Yeah, then definitely.
Which is, in previous charter changes, we've indicated that charter rules, for the language, are effectively become ordinances. If the ordinance is still the law of the land, then it shouldn't need a CEQA review before doing that. And then it would be free to act, on its own timeline. But I think it's similar to what you're saying, it might just be another vehicle for the lawyers to look at. Point is, I believe there may be a vehicle to do this because I support it, I think it makes a lot of sense. And another area where I don't believe the voter needs to be in the weeds of, floor area ratio. But I did wanna state that wasn't how the report came across, and so in version 2.0, let's just work on that, thank you.
One final area I wanted to discuss, and we've got a lot of presentations, they're recommendations. I don't disagree necessarily with some of the recommendations, but I don't know, based upon the limited time that we have on the Charter Reform Commission, that we could do a deep dive. I personally feel that that's more a policy issue, but I'd like to hear the other commissioners, and again, I really not that I don't, changing our park plan and all that stuff, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know, just, as a policy matter and with our time constraints, that we have time to explore it, but I'd like to hear from my committee members if they think it's worth, a deeper dive. Commissioner Stone.
I think there are parts of it that are worth a deep dive, and parts of it that aren't. Again, going back, what is our purpose in terms of government efficiency and looking out for all of Los Angeles rather than just parts? And having built apartments long ago in my career, there isn't a lot of green space. And the idea of increasing Park and Rec's mandatory budget from what they already are given a percentage of the charter. I actually would like to see that increase because I think it would benefit people throughout the city of Los Angeles, especially more in the areas of people of color. I'm not so worried about in Brentwood what park they're gonna go to, or Encino, or any of the, Holy Hills. But we are lacking park space, and if I think that's something that would fit within as what I believe to be the mandate that was given to us from council. Drew up the charter commission. I don't think we have. I joined with you. I think at this point, getting into what can be transferred, what can't be transferred, and such. I'm not sure some of that can be by ordinance rather than by charter, but again, in the list of things and the limited time that we had to delve into it, I agree that's probably not an issue we need to go through.
Thanks. So you have a number of recommendations in the staff report, I think a couple of them are ripe to go forward with a little further understanding of potential implications and how it relates to sort of other city structures. So one is in your E2 about the authority to lease and acquire parkland. So generally, this makes sense to me. I do think though that I want to see those adjustments in further detail, especially to make sure that, we're not running aground on some other city authority. So where these, I want to make sure that while this makes sense on the face of it, there isn't some unintended conflict. Similarly, this idea that the department could issue debt. On the face of it, that seems logical as well, and I could be quickly convinced to do that. As long as it's not resulting in some kind of, balkanization about how the city's financing structures are deployed. I certainly don't want to create a situation where, every department has its own, staff. And to lose out on sort of the centralized value and coordination and capacity that the city can provide its departments if it's providing this resources well enough. So that one, I think we could probably quickly determine whether there's any challenge on that with a little bit of staff work on it. And I do think that in terms of enabling further action, this fix, which is in a couple of the recommendations, including planning's the E3 recommendation about allowing, how to deal with rec and parks land that isn't going to be used as parkland. So I made comments on that on the Saturday meeting, which would take it out of the black and white depiction that you have in the staff report here. And I think there are ways to facilitate action in this. I would like to see us act on this because it is an obstacle to housing and other city priorities that we're trying to create. When this inflexible language is instituted on theoretically to protect our plan, but is currently only protecting the unusability of park, of city-owned city-owned land that happens to be owned by the parks, and it sits there as a result. So I think there's a way to both integrate the equity concerns as well as to create a little more flexibility for the department to be able, and the city to be able to pursue their priorities on that. Those elements I think are worth our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank my fellow commissioners for your thoughts and your input. And I want to thank the staff for their presentation. Again, welcome, Michael. And it is 6:40. I think I'm all pooped out as far as deliberations for today. So again, I want to thank everybody, thank the public for coming, and we appreciate your input as always. Is there any, you have any further?
I just need a vote precinct 5.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Is there a motion to receive today's report? There's second.
Sure, second, expecting that we're gonna be reconvening to look at, some of the outcomes of our conversation today and some further recommendation items.
Yes, thank you. Without opposition, and that motion carries. And can I finally have, just one more thing while we're all here, so it looks like we're getting into the weeds right now, but I would like to ask that executive director and the team to perhaps try to schedule another committee meeting. The holidays are coming up. So we could reach out to our public commission and see what everyone's schedule is.
Well, I'm going to invite the committee members, like I said, there's some travel coming up as well. And I think there's a lot of stuff that really intake still. And then for the team to go back based on this discussion to go through it and then bring back maybe a memo, some follow-ups, and some report backs ahead of that, and then we'll say.
Okay, thank you. So,
Before
sure.
I make a motion to adjourn,
Yes, sir.
and I tell you some of your S plans don't always come through. One, I want to commend the chair of what a tremendous job she's doing and sharing these meetings. It proves that if you're going to be a wise blend, you gotta pick and choose a little more carefully. I was gonna bring a sleeping bag in here tonight just for the fun of it. And see what the reactions are, and I don't go to sleep at 4:07. So with that, I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Sure.
I believe that opposition meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, folks.
I guess it's all this. Everybody's with. I don't think everybody's going to see.
Okay.
Boop, 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 boop.